My father retired in August. It's November now. I went to see him on a Wednesday. I had to push the front door twice because it was a humid day, and the wood swells when it's humid. It's done that since I was a kid. The house was quiet in a way I wasn't used to. The fridge was running too loud. The curtains in the living room were already open, even though nobody needed them open. My mother was at the dentist. It was just him. He was on the sofa. He'd shaved. He had on the kind of button-up he used to wear under a sweater on slightly cold days at the office. Pressed pants. A belt. Actual shoes, not slippers, like he was about to leave. He wasn't about to leave. There was nowhere to leave to. He'd been retired for 97 days, and his body still got dressed for work. He was holding a coffee mug, looking at the garden through the sliding glass door. Not in a sad way, not in a peaceful way, the way a man looks at a room he's never really been inside of before. I sat down next to him. He didn't look at me. I had been driving over with a whole list of things to tell him, about my week, about something the kid said at dinner the night before, and the list collapsed in my throat the second I sat down. None of it belonged in this room. Then he said it, without looking at me, in a voice that had no drama in it at all. I don't know what I worked for. And then he took a sip of the coffee, which was cold. And he didn't react to the cold, which is how I knew he'd been holding the mug just like that for a long time before I got there. I sat there. I couldn't think of anything to say back, not because the line was shocking, because it wasn't, because somewhere underneath every "how was the office today" conversation I'd ever had with this man over 4 decades, that sentence had been quietly assembling itself, and now it had just finished. I'd been in that house for 36 years. I knew the smell of the laundry soap my mother used. I knew which step on the stairs creaked. I knew the angle the hallway light fell at on a Sunday afternoon. But that morning, sitting next to my father on the sofa, was the first time in my life I heard the kitchen clock. It had always been there. I'd just never been in a room quiet enough to hear it. I want to tell you what that morning made me understand. About him. About me. Probably about you. Because the mistake most people work their whole life for isn't the one you think it is. It isn't a bad investment. It isn't the wrong job. It isn't picking the wrong city or the wrong partner or any of the things people lie awake at 3 a.m. worrying about. It's something quieter, something almost nobody names, and I think a lot of you have already started to feel it. You just haven't given it a name yet. My father didn't have a money problem. He had 2 paid-off cars in the driveway. He had a savings account that would carry him and my mother through the rest of their lives without a flicker of anxiety. He had health insurance, a pension, a roof, 3 kids who turned out fine, and a wife who still loved him after 43 years of marriage. By every metric anyone in our family had ever taught him to care about, he had won. And he didn't know what he'd won. I want you to try something for a second. Don't write anything down. Don't grab your phone. Just answer this in your head. What does a successful life look like to you? Picture the shape of it. The house, the job, the family, the schedule, the kind of weekend you want to be having when you're 50. Got it? Now answer the harder one. Who taught you that picture? Not society. Not my upbringing. A specific person, in a specific moment, said or did something that put that image in your head. Can you find them? For most people, when they look honestly, the answer is something like, "My father came home one day with a new title and a small raise, and I remember the way he said it more than I remember anything else from being 12. Or, "There was a kid in my high school whose parents drove a Volvo and lived in a house with a finished basement, and I decided, without knowing I was deciding, that's what made it looked like." Or, "My uncle told me at a wedding to pick a stable career, and the way he said it made it sound like the most adult sentence I'd ever heard." Those are the people who drew your finish line. Not consciously, not maliciously. They handed you a picture, and you, being 8 or 12 or 15, took it. Here's what's strange. You spent more time deciding what to order at dinner last Tuesday than you've ever spent deciding what a successful life means to you. We test restaurants, we test cars, We read 40 reviews before we buy a vacuum cleaner. And the single largest thing we'll ever build, 40 years of life arranged toward a particular shape, we built on a definition we accepted without testing, from people who weren't trying to teach us anything in particular. They were just being themselves at a kitchen table. And we were watching. That's the mistake, not the work. The work is fine. The work is even good. The mistake is that the work is being done in service of a definition of arrival that nobody in your life, including you, has ever opened up and looked at carefully. And here's the part nobody mentions. You don't find out the definition was wrong while you're working. You find out 3 months after you stop. On a Wednesday morning, with a cold cup of coffee, looking at a garden you were too busy to plant. Let me give you a number. I want you to actually sit with it for a minute, because most of us never have. 40 years of work. 22 to 62 give or take. 40 hours a week. And if you laughed at that number, you and I both know the real number is higher. 50 weeks a year, because most people get 2 off and use 1 for moving and 1 for a wedding. That's 80,000 hours. Now add the commute. Add the email at 9 p.m. Add the Sunday night feeling that's technically not work, but isn't your life either. We're somewhere around 90,000 hours. 90,000 hours. Let me make that physical, because as a number it's just numbers. 90,000 hours is 10 1/4 years of continuous 24-hour-a-day, no sleeping, no eating, no anything else time. If you took every hour you'll ever spend on work in your entire life and ran them in a single unbroken stretch, not the breaks, not the weekends, just the work itself, you would be working without stopping for more than a decade. That's the bet. That's the size of the chip you're putting on the table. That is what my career actually means in the only currency that doesn't come back: your time. You probably read 15 reviews before you bought your last pair of running shoes. You probably spent 2 weekends going back and forth between 2 cars at the dealership before you signed anything. You probably had a 40-minute argument with your partner about which sofa to buy. And the sofa isn't even going to last 20 years. The shoes, the car, the sofa. Those decisions got real, deliberate, careful examination. The 10-year decision, what shape of life all of that work is supposed to add up to, most of us made when we were 19. Half listening, surrounded by people who were also half listening, in an environment designed to push us toward a default. And then we just stopped revisiting it, because revisiting it felt like ingratitude, or weakness, or instability. So the largest bet of our life is running on the dumbest decision-making process any of us has ever used. If this is landing for you, hit the like button before you forget. It's quick, and it actually tells me whether to keep making conversations like this one or go back to making something easier. My father's 90,000 hours bought him a house, 2 cars, a pension, a marriage, 3 kids who turned out fine. Those are real things. I'm not minimizing them. But on a Wednesday at 11 in the morning, 3 months after the 90,000 hours stopped, when there was finally time to enjoy what they'd bought, he sat on the sofa and said he didn't know what he'd worked for, which means the 90,000 hours had been spent in service of a finish line that didn't, when he finally arrived, feel like the place he'd been running toward. The line was somebody else's, and he hadn't known that until he crossed it. Here's the part that's hard to say out loud. Most of you listening right now are at year 10 or year 15 of the 90,000. Which means there's still time. Not unlimited time. Real time. 40,000, 50,000, 60,000 hours of life that hasn't been spent yet, and that, right now, today, is being directed toward a finish line you may not have personally drawn. The math doesn't tell you to quit your job. The math tells you to know what you're buying with the rest of the bet. Because if you don't know, somebody else does. There's a reason almost nobody examines the definition. I want to be honest about this part because if I just tell you to go look at it, I'm pretending it's simple. It isn't. The definition is not just yours. It's shared. The picture of a good life you're carrying. The house, the job, the rhythms, the milestones is the same picture your friends are carrying, your siblings are carrying, your coworkers are carrying. The same picture your wife or your husband signed on to in their 20s when you both agreed, in some unspoken way, on the rough shape of what you were building together. To question the picture is to step a little bit outside the room everyone you love is standing in. And most people, when they feel themselves about to do that, sit back down. Because the room is warm, and the people in it are people they need. There's also a more practical reason. The path keeps paying you to stay on it. Promotions, pay raises, the compliment at the family dinner, the neighbor who tells you the new car looks great, the aunt who calls you such a good provider in a way that makes you sit up a little straighter. Every milestone you hit on the inherited path comes with a small reward. A hit of approval, a hit of belonging, a hit of, I'm doing it right. And those rewards make any quiet doubt feel ungrateful. You start thinking, why am I even questioning this? It's working. People are happy. The bills are paid. But the bills being paid and the path being yours are two completely different sentences. We routinely confuse them because they pay out at the same time. And here's the one I think hurts the most. The definition you're carrying isn't just abstract. It has faces in it. Your father's pride the day you got the offer. Your mother's quiet relief when you bought the house. Your partner's plan you both agreed to in your 20s. Your friends running their version of it next to you, comparing notes at the bar on Friday. To question the definition is to disturb something between you and them, even if they would never want you to feel that way. So most people don't disturb it. They keep running, not because they're weak, because they love the people whose hands are on the finish line. That's not a flaw. That is a deeply human thing. But it is also the reason my father sat on a sofa for who knows how long on a Wednesday morning, dressed for an office that wasn't there anymore, trying to figure out what he'd worked for. He loved us. He drew the line he thought we'd be proud of. He never tested whether the line he drew was the line he, personally, would have drawn if no one was watching. And by the time the watching ended, when we were grown, when the company was behind him, when nobody was applauding the next milestone, there was nothing left to do but sit with a cold coffee and notice that the room was very, very quiet. You're not stupid for not having tested your definition. The definition was protected by your community, by the rewards, by the people you love. Of course you didn't test it. Almost nobody does. But there's a small, specific window in your life, and it's open right now while you're listening to me. You can spend 20 minutes looking at the line you've been running toward and ask whether you'd have drawn it that way yourself if the room had been empty when you drew it. I'm not going to give you a system. I'm not going to give you a worksheet. I'm not going to tell you to journal every morning for 90 days and rewrite your life story. Most of those things, honestly, are just new finish lines that somebody else drew, dressed up in a self-improvement costume. What I'm going to ask you to do is something almost embarrassingly small. Find 20 minutes. Tonight, tomorrow, this weekend, soon. Be alone. Phone face down or in another room. Don't bring a notebook. You're not going to write anything down. You're going to have one quiet conversation with yourself around 3 questions. That is the whole thing. First question. If absolutely nobody knew, no parents, no partner, no friends, no neighbors, no algorithm, no high school reunion in 7 years where people you barely remember are going to compare notes, would I still want this exact life? The job, the house, the trajectory, the next 5-year goal? If the audience disappeared tomorrow, permanently, no one would ever again be able to tell whether you'd made it or not. Would the life you're currently building still be the one you'd build? Don't answer fast. Most people answer fast and lie. Sit with it. Because the honest answer for most of us isn't a clean yes or a clean no. It's a yes, but probably not the corner office part. Yes, but probably not the second house. Yes, but probably not the version where I work 50 hours so people I don't actually like can call me senior. That but is the line you didn't draw. Find it. Second question, and go even slower on this one. Who is the first specific person who taught me that this counted as success? Not society, not my parents' generation. A specific human being in a specific moment said or did something that put the picture of success you're carrying into your head. It could be your father at a kitchen table when you were 9, talking about a coworker who finally bought a boat. It could be a high school teacher who said, "Kids like you go to good schools," in a way that made good schools feel like the only acceptable destination. It could be a friend's parents' house you visited at 12, where everything was so calm and well arranged that you decided, without knowing you were deciding, that calm and well arranged equaled having figured life out. Find that person, name them in your head, picture the moment, because once you can see who drew the line, you can also see that they were just a person. They weren't an oracle. They were doing their best with their own inherited definition on a regular Tuesday when they had no idea you were watching them that closely. Their definition isn't a law, it's an inheritance, and inheritances can be kept or returned. Third question, and this is the one I want you to really sit with. If you arrived at the life you're building, fully, finally, every box checked, every milestone hit, tomorrow morning, would you keep going, or would you stop and look around? Most of us are running so hard toward the destination that we've never asked what we'd actually do if we got there. The honest answer, for a lot of people, is uncomfortable. I'd keep going. I'd find the next target. Which is fine. Some people are wired that way, but for many people, the honest answer is quieter and more alarming. I don't know what I'd do if I got there. I've never pictured the after. If you can't picture the after, if your entire vision of a good life is the running and not the arriving, then somewhere along the way, you accepted a definition where the whole point is to keep running, and nobody who designed that definition was thinking about whether you, the person doing the running, would actually be okay when the running stopped. Now, here's the part nobody tells you about these 3 questions. They're not designed to make you quit your job, leave your marriage, or move to a cabin in the woods. Most people who do this, honestly, don't blow up their lives. Most people discover that maybe 70% of the line they're running was actually theirs. The job is fine. The family is real. The values are honest. But there's a 30%, sometimes smaller, sometimes bigger, that isn't theirs. The aspiration that came from a coworker. The lifestyle target that came from someone they never even named on social media. The career rung that exists only because their father once mentioned it with admiration when they were 13. That 30% is what my father didn't know he'd worked for. It's what makes a man dress for the office 3 months after he stopped going to the office. It's what makes a Wednesday morning in November feel like a question with no answer. The work, the actual work, not a system, is to know which 30% isn't yours, so that the rest of your hours can be spent on the part that is. I think about my father on that sofa a lot. He would not have done much differently, honestly. He loved my mother. He loved his kids. He liked the company most of the time. He'd have made a lot of the same choices. But there was a 30%, the part where he kept dressing up after retirement, the part where the coffee got cold while he was trying to remember why, that I'm pretty sure wasn't his, and I keep thinking, what if somebody had given him these 20 minutes when he was 35? What if he'd known, at year 15, which part of the line was his and which part he was caring for somebody else? He'd still have worked. He'd still have provided. But he'd have known, and on a Wednesday in November, at 11 in the morning, he'd have been able to tell me what he worked for. That's the whole video. I'm not going to add a 5-step plan at the end. I'm not going to give you a worksheet to download. I'm going to ask you for 20 minutes, sometime in the next 2 days, alone. No phone, no music, no project. Just you, the 3 questions, and however much honesty you can spare. I want to say something honest, though, because if I don't, this is going to sound easier than it is. For a lot of you, 20 minutes alone with yourself doing nothing but thinking about your own life, is going to feel almost unbearable. Not because the questions are hard, because most adults haven't spent 20 unstructured minutes alone with themselves in months, sometimes years. We have podcasts during the commute, phones during the lunch break, shows during dinner, something playing while we fall asleep. The actual experience of sitting in your own kitchen, on your own sofa, in your own car, parked in your own driveway, with nothing playing and nothing scrolling and nothing distracting. That's a kind of quiet most of us have stopped knowing how to be inside of, which is part of why the finish line never gets examined. There's no quiet for it to surface in. So tonight, or tomorrow, or this weekend, pick a time, pick a place, tell whoever needs to know that you'll be unavailable for 20 minutes. Sit somewhere you don't usually sit when you're being productive. Not your desk, not the kitchen counter where the bills are, somewhere off duty. Then go through the 3 questions slowly. If nobody knew, would I still want this? Who first taught me this? Count it as success. If I arrived at this life tomorrow, would I keep going or stop? Don't write anything down. Don't try to solve anything. Just listen to what shows up. Some of it will surprise you. Some of it will be exactly what you already knew, but had been politely refusing to let yourself say out loud. My father is doing okay, by the way. I want you to know that because I don't want to leave him on the sofa. He started a small woodworking thing in the garage. Nothing serious. He's not selling things online. He's not building a brand. He's just making stuff in a garage. Bad stuff mostly. The first cutting board he made was so warped my mother used it as a drying rack for the spinach. But the other Wednesday, I went over. And the coffee in his mug was hot. And the TV was off because he was actually doing something he wanted to be doing, not because he was sitting with a sentence he couldn't put down. He's 71. He has, with luck, 15 good years left. I don't know if those 15 years will be the ones he was working for, but I think for the first time he might be able to tell me, on some Wednesday morning when I drop in unannounced, what he's spending them on. Which is the difference. The mistake isn't that he worked his whole life. The mistake is that he didn't know what for until after the working stopped. Most of you still have time. Not unlimited time. Real time. Use 20 minutes of it to find out. My father didn't work too hard. He worked for too long without asking who drew the line. Don't make his mistake. Take the 20 minutes. In the comments, I want one thing. Not your conclusions. Not your plan. The first person you saw when you asked who drew the line. A name. A moment. A kitchen table. Whoever showed up first when you got honest with yourself. Just that. I'll read everyone. If something in this conversation made you sit a little differently in your chair, subscribe. There's more coming. Not louder. Not faster. Just slower. About the things we built without asking who we were building them for. I'll see you on the next one.